Okay, so I'll start with introducing Green Drinks Jakarta. If you guys haven't heard of it, Green Drinks Jakarta is or Green Drinks rather, is a global gathering for anyone who considers themselves green, whether they work in energy, conservation, policy, or entrepreneurship. So everyone is welcome with Green Drinks, and it is actually a global organization with lots of different branches in different cities that anyone can start. So our team is made up of volunteers working in various sectors and have previously held events at WeWork in Greenhouse co-working spaces. For more info, you can check out the website greendrinks.org, again pinned in the comment, and then you can find our city there, Jakarta. If you live somewhere else, there might be some other chapters in your area as well, and of course you can always start your own. For more info, for more info on Green Drinks Jakarta and our events, you can check out our Eventbank page. Again, the link is in the pinned comment. And if you'd like to use our platform to share about anything, feel free to email us at greendrink.jakarta@gmail.com. And my name is Karina Kusumadewi, and I will be your host for today. And today we'll be joined by our guest, Melissa Kowara of Extinction Rebellion Indonesia. So I'll just invite her right now.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi. Hi. Sorry, since it's called Green Drinks, I thought we should drink.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, very in tune with the drinking theme. I also have my water bottle here. Not an exciting drink, but there you go. So I'll introduce you guys to our speaker. So this is Melissa. She is a toy maker, a restaurateur, and she is also an activist and one of the coordinators for Extinction Rebellion Indonesia. And so Melissa, can you give us a bit of an intro for Extinction Rebellion and especially its chapter here in Indonesia?
Sure. So I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of Extinction Rebellion, but so Extinction Rebellion itself actually started in the UK in 2018. It's not an organization, it's not a company or anything like that, it's just a movement. So what it means is that it's completely decentralized. There is no owner. In fact, even the coordinators, we have this thing called the regenerative culture, in which the coordinator actually have to switch around every 3 months. So there's no leader per se. It's just a movement, just like the Black Lives Matter, for example, at the moment. It's a movement, and the movement's goal is just one, which is to rebel against the very concept of going extinct because of the system's fault. So we live in a toxic world where we were born into this, we didn't choose it, and yet we are in the middle of the 6th mass extinction. Why? It's because of some elites have decided that they want to make the world this way. And it's not, again, it's not individuals' fault or anything, it's just the system, right? So what this movement is about is speaking up to exactly that. We want the system to change. We want things to change so that we don't die, essentially. It basically is that. But yeah, so again, the movement itself is it's actually already in, I think, 120 countries now. It's quite widespread. Extinction Rebellion Indonesia just started August of last year.
Oh, wow.
But we are a growing movement. Hopefully everyone listening will agree and join. Yeah, because it really is not, it's not like a company or anything. It's just really a statement that we don't want to die because of a toxic system. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So from what I understand, Extinction Rebellion is all about people power, right? It's about just amplifying our voices, uniting our voices against extinction, basically, and demanding change from our leaders.
Correct.
And
And
yeah,
And
go on.
that's why we everywhere around the world, Extinction Rebellion only has 3 demands, and that's why that's actually the only reason why we join under the same brand, so to speak, or the same logo. Actually, I have the logo right here. This one is a bit altered to Indonesia. You see the colored flags.
Ah, nice.
But essentially, what it is, it's a clock, jam pasir. It's a, what do you call it? Sad. What's the English word for that?
I don't know. I can't think of it actually. But yeah, we know
Okay.
what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean. So it's a time, and the circle represents the earth, and it really
Ah.
just signifies that we are running out of time, because there's a lot of there's this report called the IPCC report, and it's basically made by the UN, a group of scientists within the UN that already declared that we only have 12 years left to change things, and this was done in 2018. So we have two years. Now it's 10 years. Thank you, Bianca. She just wrote hourglass. Yes, it's an hourglass.
Yeah,
Thanks.
hourglass. Somebody said egg timer. That's funny.
But yeah, so we only have 10 years left now before shit is irreversible. And what would happen when shit goes bad is basically it's what we call the point of no return, because one disaster will lead to another, which will exacerbate another, and it will just keep going, rolling, and nothing you can do will stop the warming of the planet. And then that's when you're really thinking, all right, we're really gonna go extinct, or maybe some of us will survive in a bunker somewhere. But yeah, it's pretty critical. But sorry, I'm a bit rambling. But back to the 3 demands.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I just want to add to that. And also, when things are reversible, and even now when things are starting to change climate-wise, we already can see that people who are most disadvantaged, who are less privileged, are usually the people who are most affected by climate change. So this is also very much a social and equality issue as well.
It is exactly that. I mean, this is why I'm not a fan of people saying the word climate, because what is climate? It kind of makes it feel like it's a distant issue. It's environment, make it feel like it's an animal rights thing. It's like a forest thing. But what's actually being threatened is our very existence. It's your family is the environment. It's my baby nephew is the climate. Like, it's all connected, right? And so by using the word climate, environment, it always makes it feel so not personal, but it is. And as you correctly pointed out, the people who are most affected are those who are marginalized to begin with. And those guys are not even contributing much to the carbon emission to begin with. And so it's just a complete shit show, really. I mean, that's why you see everywhere, like, social justice is climate justice, because it is. Climate justice means human rights justice. It means health crisis. It means everything. It's all connected. So we should really abandon the use of the word environment, to be honest. But hey, here we are. That's what it is.
Yeah. And speaking of that issue as well, I want to introduce the general topic of today. So I'm sure everyone can see that in the past few years, we've been having an upsurge of people all over the world, just like what Melissa said, demanding for concrete action from our governments to take this climate crisis seriously and to declare that there is indeed a climate crisis. And so today we're going to talk about how the Indonesian government is reacting to this, because voices in Indonesia shouting for climate justice is being amplified here. And a lot of organizations are popping up, like Extinction Rebellion and Bye Bye Plastic Bags and so many others that, a decade ago didn't really get much exposure in mainstream media. Now it's being highlighted by our own TV screens, in the radio. It's being talked about everywhere. And so how has the Indonesian government reacted to this? And with the current situation of a pandemic and people all being quarantined in their homes, how has that changed the government's reaction to the climate policies and initiatives that they're doing? Is the pandemic retracting the attention away from climate issues? And we also want to talk about how the world has changed during the pandemic and whether it has affected the earth and the environment positively, negatively, both. How has it changed? And we also would like to explore what the government is likely to do post-pandemic. So we'll just get straight into that. So Melissa, what do you think how do you think the society has changed during this pandemic compared to before? Like, how has, people being quarantined and traveling less, being out and about less, how has that affected the environment or emissions?
Well, it's easy to think that because of the pandemic, everyone is at home, everyone is not traveling and whatnot. You would think that it affects the world in a big way in terms of global carbon emission. But the numbers really pretty much speak for itself. I think there's a reduction globally, about 14% in carbon emission. And if you think about it, the amount of flights you don't take and whatnot, it really should decrease by a lot more, right? And if you really dig deeper, like why is this not decreased further, you'll notice that the biggest carbon emission to begin with are not necessarily individual decisions or individual consumptions and whatnot. The biggest carbon emissions actually come from fossil fuel in terms of energy generation. So you have your coal power plants that are still going on, regardless of the need of the energy, by the way. So they just keep running it anyway because they want to burn it. And so this is an interesting fact. So in Java alone, we have more than 40% extra surplus electricity in reserve. And yet they are still building new power plants. For what? Who knows? Well, we do know why, but not blaming. But so that's one aspect, right? And then and then other things like mining. Mining is one of the industries that is allowed in the PSBB moment to just keep going. And this is seen everywhere around the world. It's actually really sad. So if you look into, say, places like Brazil, there are more deforestations happening right now than pre-pandemic. And it's because the people who are demonstrating before can't physically demonstrate right now. So they're just like burning and slashing everywhere. And this is also happening in Indonesia. It also happened. So recently the government passed a law called Undang-Undang Minerba. And Minerba is minerals, basically it's mining and coal. And this particular undang-undang was a problematic legislation to begin with. That Jokowi actually said that they were going to stop. Making this legal before the pandemic, and then when the pandemic hits, all of a sudden they just declared that we're gonna do a finalization of this law, and then the next day and it's like this is stamped, done. And we're like, what the fuck? So, what the fuck just happened?
So as soon as eyes weren't on them, they just kind of went and just did whatever they wanted to do.
It's so sad, but it's not just Indonesia. Australia as well. Australia has a lot of mines that are that were just newly opened in the past 2 months that were never allowed before. And again, because people aren't able to protest and whatnot, they just like, fuck it. And then,
right.
So that's a bit sad, but
Right.
Okay, actually, sorry. Let me just give a little positive note on that.
Okay. Just a
on
little
the
bit
other
positive.
hand, though, I actually am very hopeful in terms of the human side. And it's because when you are home, and we're seeing a lot of people are being home. Well, forget the home part. We see from the pandemic already that humanity is inherently good. I'm sure a lot of people who are listening now thought that Indonesia would be so much in more shit than it is now from the pandemic. And the only reason why we have kind of been okay till now, and it's because of the civilians have really stepped up. Civilians have all stepped up and like just join each other, like help each other and whatnot. And I think this is a very positive takeaway because it really shows that if humanity really come together, we can solve problems, and we are able to put aside individual agendas and whatnot for a greater good. And again, inherently, humans are good. And yeah. And the fact that they are all home, I mean, these type of talks will not be possible pre-pandemic, for example, right?
Definitely, yes. And it wouldn't be accessible to everyone because everyone can be in different cities.
Exactly.
Right.
So these type of things are one of those things that were positive takeaways, I guess, from the pandemic, is because the people are able to be educated, and we learn every day. How much facts are we learning? Black Lives Matter, Papuan Lives Matter. I didn't know Papuans were being racist against, but like, you know, it's things like this. We are getting smarter, and even though the government are doing like dodgy stuff here and there, I think the people power will kind of overthrow the shitty dodgy things that's going on the side at some point.
Yeah.
Hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, indeed. And especially like now, in this quarantine conditions, we can see that some of the things that we thought were necessary for our lives aren't so necessary after all. And hopefully people can be, you know, more mindful about what they spend their money on, what they do, how they live their lives, and really shuffle up those priorities that they have, and start thinking about how they impact the world. So right now, because we're all quarantined, what can we do to keep our eyes on the government? Because we can't physically go to the streets to protest. What can we do to, just to let the government know that we're watching?
Well, I think the important before even letting the government know is educating yourself, right? Really try to educate yourself all the time. Read up more news about this, follow it up. I mean, one of the things I always go to is The Guardian. They're one of the more independent journalists out there, and they do cover a lot of climate crisis and whatnot. But really, just try to be more aware. Look up all these things, and but the key after you know all these things, and even before you know everything, you really should just keep bitching online and spread the word. You know, like really raise awareness amongst your own circle, and then grow it. And really just the more people talk about this, the more mainstream it gets, the more the movement will be stronger, right? Just like the Black Lives Matter. I think somebody just commented, like, do you think it's also happened after the pandemic? I mean, definitely, right? Because it's been a problem for so long, and yet it's never been exposed to this level. And having everyone stay at home has definitely helped in this explosion of exposure. And this is exactly the same exposure that we need to bring for the climate crisis, because it is a crisis, and it doesn't just affect one community; it affects everyone. So educate yourself and keep spreading it. And with XR, we actually believe that change will happen when a certain threshold is achieved. So we believe in this thing called theory of change. And this is based on history. So the theory of change is that anywhere in the world throughout history, if you have 3.5% of the population standing for demanding the same thing through methods of non-violent direct action, which means basically peaceful protests that are disruptive, because protests are generally disruptive. Right? You're blocking the path, you're blocking the road.
Yeah, they're disruptive in nature, of course.
Correct. And it has to be disruptive, because if it's not disruptive, then people will be like, yeah, oh, sure, you're just hanging out on the streets, go ahead. Nobody's going to change anything. The government will not change anything, right? They will not listen. But when it is done in a disruptive way, and every movement in the whole world, once you pass the 3.5% threshold, change always happens. And this, we've seen this repeatedly in history, in the Philippines.
Only 3.5%. That's
That's
all
it.
it takes.
That's all it takes.
Well, that doesn't seem, too inachievable. We can definitely achieve 3.5%, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's so achievable. And the biggest hope out of this is that once you demand change, the solutions are all there. And the only issue with the reason why we haven't done all these changes and all these solution-based things that will actually take us out of the shit is because the government has no intent to do it. But it's there. It's
right.
I mean,
yeah.
pick any problem that we have that is contributing to the climate crisis, and I guarantee you there is. Sorry, I keep dropping the phone, but I guarantee you there's already a solution. Like,
of course. I think there is an action with the government because maybe they haven't seen that this is what the people want, because in the end we are a democracy, our voices have power, and if we show them enough that, hey, you're not going to be elected if you're going to be all shady regarding the environment, then I think they'll be forced to pay attention to what we really want. And so that's why initiatives like Extinction Rebellion is so important, and amplifying and uniting these voices to push the agenda forward to the government. And so I want to ask about the Indonesian government. So what have they done for what strides have they made? What strides have they made for the environment to reverse the climate crisis? Have they made any? And how has it changed during the pandemic?
well, some people are going to get really pissed off hearing this, but out of frustration, of course. But so the Indonesian government has, and a lot of our governments out there has done the same. They have been really focusing on economic growth, which to a certain extent, I understand the general logic of it. Country is still backwards, or we still have a lot of poverty, so we need people to grow. We need more money so that we can reinvest in welfare, right? But the fact is, economic growth, which is measured by one thing, which is the GDP, right? And the GDP, for those who don't know, GDP is the gross domestic product, which is basically the measure of how much money, how much value is made through products that are made or bought, depending on which way you count it, by a country. So it really is how much value, again, in terms of money term, is generated within the economy. So it doesn't say anything about who owns what, right? It's just literally the amount of richness of a country. So you can have one person opening up a gold mine, and he just earned a $10 billion mine, and that's we have reached economic growth, but does not say anything about what a country should achieve, which is the good of the people, right?
Right, and how it's distributed among citizens.
Nothing at all. So that's the problem.
Right.
So from the very beginning, the country is already focusing on that, which is a wrong metric to begin with, and so much that this goal is their priority over anything else, which includes the environment. So that's why we see a lot of burning of the forest. That's why we see a lot of coal mines and removal of the indigenous people and whatnot, because it's not part of the economic growth scheme. And and this is what we see, and still happening. And it's actually proven recently because they just submitted this thing called the NDC. Sorry, I'm just about to open my cheat note on the NDC. So it's the nationally determined contribution. So as part of the IPCC, maybe you've heard of the Paris Climate Agreement. So as part of this gentleman's agreement type thing, every country has to submit an NDC, which basically outlines their policies for the next 10, 20 years, or no, until the 2050, about things that will mitigate the climate crisis. So they will have to...
Right. So the NDC, we should expect to see them to get rid of non-renewable sources of energy, right?
Supposedly, right? Because the IPCC is very clear that if we don't want shit to go irreversible to the really, really bad situation, we need to cut all emissions by 45% by 2030, which means
2030.
no coal. Yeah, which means no coal.
Right.
I mean, you have to cut. You're not talking about like, oh, not increase. You're talking about cutting. So you really need to get rid of all coal. And,
we only have 10 years.
Yeah.
Barely enough.
And bear in mind, this 10 years is not set in stone, because all these numbers are based on some sort of like modeling on computer models, right? And it is impossible for us to incorporate every single variable in the whole wild world, in the whole of the earth, to be able to get a 100% accuracy level. So what we see these days is every time a scientist or whatever comes up with a new model, they always say like, oh, we didn't factor this in. Oh, we didn't factor this in. Oh, actually, this is going to be faster. So maybe the 10 years is more like 5 or a 3. We don't know. Exactly.
I see.
It's pretty fucking scary.
Things are being updated always. And so, yeah, that's very, very worrying. And so has their policies changed? How do you think the government will act regarding the climate post quarantine? Do you think?
So even before post quarantine, or actually during the quarantine, so they have released this just when the quarantine just started, and their NDC is actually setting. So, okay, a little backtrack. At the moment, the world is at about 1.1 degree temperature-wise, 1.1 degrees Celsius hotter than the pre-industrial revolution times. So that's always the benchmark, pre-industrial revolution, because that's when we start burning all the carbon in the world. So
and we're
at the moment it's 1.1
above?
Above the pre-industrial right now. If we stop all carbon emission in the whole world, the Earth will still get warmer, because there's a lot of carbon and other greenhouse gases still trapped in the atmosphere that hasn't taken effect yet.
Right.
So if we stop everything, I think it's setting us for a warming of 1.4 already. And
if we stop everything now.
Yeah, if we stop everything now in the whole world, it will still get hotter. The Earth will still get hotter, which means the banjir will still get more, the typhoons will still get more, there will still be more fires and whatnot. Things are going to get more shit still. Okay. Right? So that's still happening. But what we want to do is to not make that shit even worse, right? So based on the NDC that Indonesia have submitted, we are pretty set for a 4-degree warming relative to the pre-industrial revolution, which
is the irreversible.
Irreversible is at 2 point something. Like 2 is already like world's gonna end.
Oh,
they're set
I
for
see.
4.
Right.
We are set for 4, which is insane.
Right.
And if you look further in the NDC itself, it outlines different ambitions for energy sector, waste sector, toxic waste, whatever. But if you just pick the easiest one to see, which is the energy sector, you would expect them to say 0 coal by 2050, right? Or whatever it is, which is what Germany is doing. 0 coal by I think it's 2050. But turns out what Indonesia had written is by 2050, Indonesia will have coal minimum 25%, which means they have zero intent to remove coal completely.
Of getting rid of coal. Right. That's crazy, because, I mean, we're in such a we're so rich in natural resources and sources of renewable energy like geothermal. We have the sun all year round.
Yep.
I mean, even countries in Europe who are really big on solar, like Germany, they don't even have the sun all year round. They have winters. And it's crazy to me, the fact that we have 12 hours pretty much of sun all year round, and we're not making use of it because it's basically free energy, free money.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's crazy. And so what do you think is going to happen post-pandemic? Because I've heard that with some countries like China, they are, intent on accelerating their economic growth to make up for lost time. What do you think Indonesia is going to do?
Yeah, I think there are already talks about that, and I have no doubt if it was up to if nobody speaks up, then that is definitely the direction that is going to happen. And that's exactly why I think it's a very critical point for us citizens to actually speak up, because again, like if it is up to them, money is everything, right? So it really is, how to get this growth and whatnot. So what do I think will happen? I'm actually a very hopeful, optimistic person, regardless of what I'm talking about. I believe in the people. I believe in the humans. I think we are we are getting smarter all the time. And as you said before, 3.5% is not much. We're not talking about moving an entire country here, especially because it's completely understandable that it's impossible to move an entire country to protest this, especially because 60% of us are still kind of threatened by the poverty line in Indonesia. So it's not even reasonable to expect these people to protest. But change is coming. Either way, change is coming, whether we like it or not, right? Because at some point the banjir will get like really bad, or the water crisis will really hit Java at the same time, and the food crisis will just exacerbate at some point. At some point, people will realize, and people will complain, and people will demonstrate. It's just a matter of exactly, because they will die otherwise. They will die.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, it only takes 3.5% of us, right?
Yeah, so I think it will happen. I don't know for sure how much damage the economy or the economic growth scenario that the government's been pushing will damage the environment as a whole before it's stopped. But I know it will be stopped. But that's our homework, right? We really gotta stop it before shit hits the fan.
Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So what do you think? So obviously so many people are stressed out about this. Even eco-anxiety has become a coined term. I know that you can relate with that term a lot. So what can people do to take action? Because people, we're doing very little work inside. We have a lot of time to pay attention to the things that matter. How can people take to the streets without taking to the streets? Because obviously we're stuck inside.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. At some point, we will be safe enough to go out, and we should be in the streets, even if it is, social distancing and whatnot. But in the meantime, use your voice. Use your voice online. Use your voice to your direct community. Make them find out. Well, actually, with this, there's always two approaches to this, right? One is you really gotta demand to the government and whatnot, and to get that, you need people. So spreading awareness is still priority at this point, because again, you can't go to the streets. But the goal is to spread awareness so that when you are ready to go to the street, you have enough people with you to go to the street. But really join a lot of movements online. Just keep bitching. You never know who's listening. And don't think that, because I still like use straws, or I still like to take long baths and whatever, that you don't have the right to speak up even. It's not, it's everybody has the right to speak up. It's about our existence. It doesn't matter what we do, even if we still go shopping or whatever, who cares? Even if you eat beef, so what? You're born in a society where beef is available and you can afford it. Like, it's not your fault McDonald's is fucking good. You know, it's and I'm sorry, like, McDonald's is fucking good. But it's just, sorry.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I feel like with, sorry, that's fine. So I just want to add, I think a lot of corporations have done this thing that's actually pretty sneaky, because they've been telling the consumers, like, say, you know, mineral water companies, they're like, hey, here's some water, buy it, but it's your responsibility to recycle this, because if the world is on fire, it's your fault because you didn't recycle. And how sneaky is that? Because they're the one who produced the water bottles. And, you know, this applies to so many other things, like, you know, sources of energy as well. And so, yeah, so many other things. And I think that's why, and obviously us as consumers, we can't really be super effective in policing these corporations. It takes a lot of us. And so that's why having systemic change is really important, right, from the government. And that's why focusing our protests on the government to do some systemic change would be really, really important. So do you think, you know, paying attention to what the government is doing would be really, really crucial then?
Yep. I mean, if you want to really track what the government is doing one by one, it's quite straining on you, actually, and it's like really, really stressful. But you raise an interesting, you raise a really interesting point, to which that I think the corporations and whatnot have been so geared towards individual change that it's somewhat distracting from the real issues here. Because if you look at, again, coming back to the carbon emission, because that's the measure that they keep saying. I don't even like the word carbon emission. What the fuck is carbon emission? It's not even so clear. Like it should really be like products that kill people, you know? Like but anyway, that's
to get the message across really clearly.
Side note. But the key is that if you look at the individual change, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying individual change is not crucial. I think it's very necessary. I think in the new world that we want to live in, the resilient world where we are living in harmony with nature, these individual change will be the way of life.
Right.
But do I think these individual change will save us from climate emergency alone? No. That is very clear. It will not. Because it doesn't matter if the entire world stops using plastic straw, we will still burn. It doesn't matter if the whole world stops single-use plastic, we will still burn. But are these single-use plastics, is there any space for these single-use plastic in the world that we're envisioning? No. It doesn't. So I think the key is
but it
not
just
to
takes
see...
too long, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is just...
And we're running out of time.
Correct. But we still have to do it. But it's not enough. Because, again, like, as you said, we're pressed for time. And and as you said, it's really tricky what they do, because if you trace back, there's a lot of documentaries on this, actually. Netflix actually does quite a lot of good documentaries, so it's interesting to just go through and check it out. But the recycling industry, for example, it was created by the virgin plastic manufacturing. And they knew full on from the beginning that only a small fraction of the plastics they produce are able to be recycled. And yet, knowing this, they purposely made it big, the whole recycling aspect, and they pumped billions of dollars to tell the world that you can recycle, so that they have more excuse to make the virgin plastic to begin with. So this is the very tactic that they've been using for everything. And it just spurs the consumerism, right? Which, again, furthers... kind of ties in with the story of growth. But the fact is, there is no infinite growth in a finite planet. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't work. And that's why we're in this shit to begin with.
Right. And so in keeping with, you know, us needing to keep track of what our governments are doing, Do you have any resources that people here, every one of us, can look to keep track of like what's going on climate-wise?
Yeah. Well, Indonesia specifically, there's actually a lot of organizations that follow these specific things. Extinction Rebellion, of course, we will post random things here and there. But like the other NGOs, the old, longer standing NGOs like Greenpeace, 350, they actually do raise quite a lot of local issues. You know, this particular undang-undang will come up. This particular law will be enacted. So all those organizations are actually very good way to learn about these things. But the more, and this is what I said before as well, like technology's gotten so great that the more you look for things like this on Google and Instagram, they will suggest it to you anyway, more news because of the algorithm. And I think it's a brilliant thing. And this is how human awareness will just rise up, and we'll get smarter, and we won't take for this bullshit. I really believe that the world will change for a better way anyway. But yeah,
so
really
we should just start, basically.
Just start. Educate yourself. Google climate crisis. Actually, you can follow hashtags, right, on Instagram. You can start following the hashtag krisis iklim or climate emergency, because honestly, like, it's gotten to the point that it's so bad that every week there is at least 2 new news that is like, what the fuck is that? Like record heat in Antarctica, or Siberia having 26 degrees in Siberia in winter. Like, what the fuck is happening? And places like France will no longer have vineyards, for example, because all the crops will die. So things like
it's too hot for them.
Because it's too hot. Ski resorts had to make fake snow. Like, I mean, these might sound small. Actually, the big shit is the one in Africa where they're going to have a huge famine because of a locust invasion. And it's like biblical shit. So the more you read this is where the eco-anxiety comes in, by the way.
Right. Because it starts snowballing. Just like irreversible climate change. But anyway, to keep it lighter, so what can people do? So we need to educate ourselves. So keep track. What was that link that you mentioned? Was it Climate Watch? Something?
So it's
Climate Tracker. Climate Tracker.
Oh, so if you want to know the numbers, the actual numbers, and you know the projection on our actual carbon emission versus the policies of each country, there's a website called climateactiontracker.org.
And
what it does is it tracks the carbon emissions of individual countries per time frame. So for example, Indonesia, you can see where they stand 2011, 2012, 2013 onwards until now. And how they do this is they look into the actual economy, the different policies, and like how the GDP is actually built in terms of what industries and whatnot. And they also track the policies to sort of model what it looks like in next year, the year after until 2050. And based on this, you can really see where each country stands. And where Indonesia stands is really, really bad. And it's not bad relative to other countries per se. I mean, it is, but it's unfair to compare Indonesia with other countries, right? So you can really just compare Indonesia now with Indonesia before, and you'll see that Indonesia's commitment towards, say, like keeping destruction of the earth to a minimal point has actually decreased. So our policies were less destructive a few years ago than it is now, which really shows the intent of the government. Again, I keep coming back to this, but it really is so crucial for us to speak up, because if we leave it to the government to do whatever, I mean, I'm definitely not having kids. Let's put it that way.
I see. So we need to keep educating ourselves and keep track of like what's happening in the world. And
Yeah.
we need to join movements, right, to amplify our voices. And
Yeah.
can you
Because
recommend some? Can you
well,
recommend some
Extinction
like other
Rebellion.
movements to follow?
um, the thing with the movements, right? There's the actually for me, Extinction Rebellion. Again, I'm not saying this because I like it or whatever. Personally speaking, I have been I've been suffering from eco anxiety for more than a year and a bit now. It's not even that long, right? But since then, I have tried absolutely everything. Like, for those who know me, like, you guys probably realize that I'm a fucking crazy shit, like, extremist the past year. To the point that I even shower with my baby nephew's bath water. I don't use any other water anymore for showers.
Oh,
To your side.
I'm not sure. Okay, go
Okay.
on. Do you mind repeating a little bit in case our connection was cut off?
Yeah, I just saying, like, I really try everything. Like, I even so as you introduced me before, like, I'm a toy maker, and I rented a place near my house for the toy workshop so that I don't need to take a car to go to work, and I actually go by Autopet, like the non-electric ones. But my point is that I've tried everything, and through my extensive research, the biggest hope I think humanity has to solve this extinction issue is actually through movements like Extinction Rebellion, where it
Right.
is
And you have a
non-political. Sorry?
and you have a hashtag, right, called Bawal untuk Bumi, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's that rebel for life, because you are actually rebelling to stay alive. And and it's just so great because it's not political. Its solutions are very clear. Oh, that's what I forgot to say. The three demands. Shit. So
That's okay. You can. Okay, so what are the three demands of Extinction Rebellion in Indonesia? And unfortunately, we do need to wrap up soon.
Shit. Okay.
Or you can.
So,
I guess we can check out. You can check out the three demands in Extinction Rebellion Indonesia's Instagram, right?
you
It should
can.
be there. It should be on the website as well, linked here in the comments. extinctionrebellion.id.
It is. But
Yeah.
essentially, if any change that you want with this particular thing, the main issue is what you've been seeing everywhere is just to really demand the government to declare that there is a problem, right? So we need them to tell the truth about the issue. And then once you have declared that there's the issue of climate emergency, change all the policies with this in mind. So your education, put climate as your classes curriculum. Energy, stop using shitty energy. Things like water treatment, right? Stop having bad water sucking that are already running out of water. So that's the second demand, right? To act and really do policies. And the third one is to have a citizens assembly. Now, this is actually quite long, so maybe you should just check it out. But basically what it is that having a non-governmental governmental group of people that are selected out in random that really represent the people. Give them the information, the full information about what the problem is and the options of what to do so that they can make the decision that is completely fair and is for the people. Because that's the biggest issue. The decisions made right now is not for the people, it is for economic growth, which only benefits the select elites, which again doesn't mean jack shit about the welfare of the people.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Mel, for that, and for the three demands of Extinction Rebellion Indonesia. For more info, you guys can check out their Instagram. And again, so some actions that you can do is to educate yourself. We will, we've talked about some links. You can just follow Extinction Rebellion in Indonesia. They always post news. You can also check out climate news on Guardian or any kind of independent news agency out there. And also join some movements because it's cheap, you'll gain some friends, and it's actually proven to be the most effective way to make change. You need to amplify your voice with other people around you who believe in the same things. And only with 3.5% people in agreement, you can make change. And it's been proven, and it's been proven by history. So thank you so much, Mel, for being our guest for today. I know that we'll try to include an Bahasa Indonesia transcript for this. Unfortunately, because Green Drinks Jakarta has always been done in English, so this is why our format is like this, but we'll try to post some important information from this live stream in Indonesian as well. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and check out Extinction Rebellion. Okay, bye everyone.
Yay. Thanks.